Welcome to Fit Kids Conversations. I'm your host, David Jacobson, and I'm here with today's guest, Francesca Schuler, president of the California Fitness Alliance. We'll be talking all things youth fitness, mental health, and social emotional well-being. Welcome, Francesca.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Been looking forward to this conversation for a while. Ashley Hunter, CEO of Fit Kids, has spoken so highly of you and your work together on the Governor's Council. So if you could describe some of that, we would love to hear about it.
We both serve on the Governor's Council for Physical Fitness and Mental Well-Being in California. And so she and I have gotten to know each other. We live in the fitness world in different ways. I was most recently the CEO of a large health club chain based in Central California, and then also part of the California Fitness Alliance. But it's been great to get to know more people in the physical fitness space through the council, because I think we're really trying to create a movement around movement to really get people in California moving for their mental and physical health. So Ashley's been instrumental in driving that as well.
Glad to hear it. Can you describe briefly your athletic background, your fitness journey, as it were, from childhood up through your crewing career at Brown and onto your current career?
Well, I'm probably one of the only people that's going to come on this and admit I was not a great athlete, particularly in high school. I played sports. My grew up playing sports, being active outside. I have two younger sisters. My dad was a big squash player, tried to get us into squash, never really took, but played mostly basketball in high school. But I would definitely say I was a very average athlete, but liked it, loved the team aspect, liked moving around. When I got to college, I discovered rowing, which seemed to be more fit for me. I'm strong and was able to just row back and forth pretty well versus having to involve a ball or a racket. So I found my sport in college, did that for a little bit while I was at Brown, which was great. Probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. And then, after college, I've had, probably like everyone, a journey of trying to stay active, having moments when work or life or kids takes over and having to remotivate. And so kind of that was my personal journey, and then really got back into it in terms of thinking through the implications and how many people have access to physical activity. Where is physical activity in the world when I got back into the fitness industry? So most people who come on these shows probably tell you they were D1 athletes and did all of that. I would say I love sports because it's good for you, and I love the team aspect of it. And while I am competitive, I've probably been more successful competing in other arenas than in athletics, but didn't stop me. I still did it, which was great. And I grew up at a time where you could, and that's what I think is so sad about where we are today, is for so many kids, it's kind of club or nothing, or elite or nothing. And so many people are being excluded from sports, which for me would have been heartbreaking.
Well, you could host this as well as I can, because that's a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about next anyway, in terms of just what do you see as the greatest challenges and problems confronting kids in fitness in our society, in our country, and how we cultivate fitness in kids or fail to?
Great question. I think there's two pieces of that. So I'll start with the kids part of it for sure. I think a couple of things have happened. One is, I think the emphasis on more elite sports has gotten bigger and bigger, driven in a large part, sadly, by the desire to use sports as a way to get into college, which, there's very few people who will play college sports. The rest of us will. I did, but I walked on. That's not how I got into college. And now there's so much emphasis at such a young age to, be on a team and win, and then be on club. And then kids get limited to one sport in high school, which I can't even imagine. I got to try everything, which was great. And so I think the emphasis on kind of super competitive sports has been really damaging for younger kids in particular, because they opt out really early on and never get back in again, because you can't go to high school and walk onto the football team or walk onto the gymnastics team. You just can't do it anymore. And that, to me, is a shame, because in these formative years, you should be able to try everything. So I think that's one thing that we've done kind of horribly wrong, probably all of us collectively, we need to fix. I think the second thing is we aren't talking about the importance of just moving for mental health. I think this notion of play and activity and being active, we all grew up that way and know how important it is. And I think everyone still knows how important it is, but they separate that conversation from phones, social media, mental health. I actually think we need to bring those conversations together and think about what makes a happy kid. And it's not being on your phone all the time. You'll be on the phone some, but not all of it. It's being with other kids. It's trying fun things. It's playing. And so I think we're not accelerating solutions to the lack of physical activity because we're having these conversations in separate places versus saying, what's one of the best ways to help kids feel better about themselves? Just get them moving. Not in club sports, just move. You can dance, you can, run, walk, skip, hula hoop. It doesn't matter. And do it together. So that's a second thing I think that has happened that's been, I think, bringing those conversations in the mental part of physical activity, we need to really lean into. And then the last thing I'd say is more about the parents. I used to say when I was in the fitness business, we're in the motivation business. That's the business we're really in. And it's hard to motivate today. It's always been hard to motivate, but it's particularly not hard now because people's lives are busy. They have lots of competing priorities. And so I think for adults, we also need to open up the lens of how to think about activity. And I was guilty of, if I'm not sweating really hard, I'm not working out. So then if I knew I wasn't going to sweat really hard, I'd do nothing at times in my life. And that's crazy. Just take a walk. And so I think from an adult standpoint, we need to reduce the emphasis on this sort of elite, super intense workout and say, just move, which is a lot of why we kind of started the California Moves campaign. Because I believe once you move, all of a sudden you're like, I feel better, and you'll keep moving. And if the parents are moving, then the kids are moving. So I think those are kind of three big issues that I see, and that's really impacted very negatively the physical well-being of kids and adults in our country.
So I'm looking for solutions to how to get through to parents and even coaches and teachers, other caregivers who are in charge of these kids' well-being, but are thrown in, just by virtue of, we need somebody to teach PE or something like that. But they, kind of either have that all or nothing mentality, and then too many of them have the nothing mentality to begin with. So how do we get through to those folks, and with what message?
That's the $1 million question. But a couple thoughts on that. I think there's a few things. I'll take it in a couple different buckets. One is just messaging and communication. And I think the fitness industry is part of the problem as well, and the messaging the fitness industry puts out there. So in my previous role, we ended up using no models, no elite athletes. We only used our members. We showed people of all shapes and sizes, with kids, without kids, doing a whole range of activities in any of our imagery. And we ended up inviting a lot more members into our clubs. And so from a communication standpoint, I think we need to show movement in lots of different ways. I also think we need a campaign, public service campaigns around the importance of movement. If you think about seatbelts, smoking, drugs, there's been some success, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. There's been some really successful and some not so successful. Unfortunately, the drug campaign, I don't think, has moved the needle, but the seatbelt one certainly has. And my frustration is, I say this all the time, it's pharmaceutical companies sell hope in a pill. So you see this commercial and someone says, take this pill and you'll be running through the fields with your family or whatever. I want to sell hope in a walk or in a workout or in a dance or in a movement. And I think if we can come together and have some messaging around, it's not this sort of extreme all or nothing, but just the why behind its importance. So it's not about just working out. It's about bending over and picking up your kid. It's about getting in and out of the car when you're 75. I think messaging around that, we have a huge opportunity to do some really creative public service campaigns to help change people's perception of what it means to move, but more importantly, why it matters. I think the second is, I love your point on coaching. Actually, Ashley and I are on the same committee on the Governor's Council, and we are working on helping to accelerate this idea of positive coaching. I know you were part of the Positive Coaching Alliance. Any of us can be a coach. Any of us can help someone move. But all of us are scared to do it sometimes because we're like, I don't know what play to run in basketball, or, oh my God, how do I help a kid learn how to run? And so what we are really wanting to do as part of the council's work is open up some resources to say, are you interested in helping kids move? Take this fairly simple certification. Here's some tools, just go do it. And I think the Positive Coaching Alliance has been amazing at that, and accelerating and amplifying that would be something that we could do at a grassroots level to get more adults involved. And I think if they get involved to help their kids, then they'll move themselves, and vice versa. So those are kind of two things that I would love to see more easy ways for people to learn how to be a positive coach, and some public service campaigns around why movement matters for your mental and physical health.
Thanks again for another segue, because I did want to talk for sure about mental health, and especially in the wake of the pandemic and the heightening of people's awareness of mental health and the stigma attached in admitting that you have a problem, you need help, you need resources, whatever. There is increased likelihood, it seems, that just as a survival technique, if nothing else, people will be led into movement as a part of their mental well-being. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I am not a mental health expert. I want to be really clear about that, and so grateful for the people that are. But what I do know is that based on tons of scientific research, as well as just my experience running, we had hundreds of thousands of members who didn't have access to working out during the pandemic and then did again. It's a huge driver of mental health, and I'm not sure that connection happens often enough. And so I think getting people to understand that actually movement is as important for your mind as it is for your body is essential. There's so much what's great is there's a lot of good conversation around mental health now, which there needs to be more, so people ask for help before they really need it desperately. But it's also this idea of you can find ways to help your own mental health on your own, taking a walk, or in community. I mean, Vivek Murthy, the Surgeon General, just did this whole article on loneliness and this huge epidemic of loneliness we have, which obviously loneliness then leads to mental health challenges. And, there's no better thing than taking a walk or working out at a boot camp or taking a dance class with a group of people to find your friends and also get moving. So a lot of it's a conversation around this and the linkage that I think we can all continue to emphasize and also model it. I mean, I have friends who, struggle with getting moving. And so I always make it my personal job to find something that they like. But I think most of all, the conversation around movement as a solution for mental health, that conversation needs to continue to get louder and stronger, because it could really benefit a lot of people.
But there's, consideration of top-down versus bottom-up movement in your movement. And there's also, grassroots versus government. And they're not necessarily opposed, but they're not necessarily working in tandem either. So if you had to lean one way or another, how are you weighing those things out? Grassroots and government, top-down, bottom-up?
So I think movement has to happen at the grassroots level. I believe that. I think that has to happen in communities. It has to happen with families. It has to happen in schools. It has to happen in the workplace. I think the workplace can be a huge help in getting people moving through a variety of suggestions, gyms and offices, et cetera. I do think the government can play a big role in helping increase access. And so one of the things that is missing for many is safe and equitable access to ways to work out. And so everyone, during the pandemic, I had many people, public health officials, say, oh, anyone can go out and work out outside. It's no big deal that gyms are closed. And I'm like, well, let me walk you through the communities I serve. I serve communities in markets like Stockton and Bakersfield, where it's 104 degrees, unsafe neighborhoods where people are not comfortable doing that. And the health club was their place to go for community, for their health, for movement. And so being able to have people get access to places to move their body, I think is a role government can play in terms of enabling people to get it covered by Medi-Cal or Medicare, or covered by their HSA. It's preventative healthcare. There's lots of healthcare things that are covered that one's like, really, that's covered? why can't access to movement or places to move for people who may not be able to afford it or have to make trade-offs between like food and a gym membership? That shouldn't have to happen. So I see a role for government and policy in that. But I think ultimately motivating people is really going to have to be a grassroots effort.
If you've got any other advice for adults, parents, caregivers, like we were talking about, tips and tricks that that can help get folks moving.
I think as a parent, thinking through some creative ways to just have that joy of movement, which could be anything from like, let's play hopscotch. I mean, I remember taking my kids and we literally drew a chalk thing and played. I don't even think I really remembered how to play hopscotch, but I Googled it. But it's a funny thing. My son and I had this great game that we would like kick this rock down the blocks. We lived in San Francisco at the time. And if the rock crossed the line, you lost. But if you got it just right before the line, it did. So we had this crazy rock kicking game that we'd play up and down the hills of San Francisco that got us moving. It got us interacting. And no one would have called that a traditional workout or PE class, but it just got us moving. And so I think creativity, and if you need help with creativity, Fit Kids is a great resource. There's Positive Coaching Alliance. There are places to go. And remember, you're doing something for yourself and your child at the same time. I think the second thing I would say is your kids follow what you do. And I have seen this myself when I've gone through sort of slumps where I wasn't as working out as much, my kids kind of followed suit. And then when I got back at it, they followed suit. So as a parent, modeling what you want as well, I think is really important. And so keep that in mind, that if you're like, hey, you guys, you know what? Before dinner, we're going to just take a walk around the block. You don't have to walk 12 miles, just walk around the block. Do you want to join me? You'd be surprised. All of a sudden, one of your children, or hopefully all of them, will want to join you. So I think as a parent, it's being creative. It's making it fun, not work, modeling the behavior. I think those three things could go a long way to helping this next generation be more active, which will be essential because they're going to be taking care of us in our old age. So we need them active and healthy.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
Not in 50 years.
Absolutely. You know, I was thinking as you were speaking about possibilities of any time a child wants something from a parent, whether they want to ask about screen time or they're having some sort of existential crisis, because of something that happened in school or whatever, let's go for a walk about that. We don't have to just sit in the same room. And the walk itself helps to solve the problem, just as there's a mental clarity that occurs from the physical activity so that the actual social problem gets solved as well.
Couldn't agree with you. I think that's a great perspective and a great tip. I totally agree with you. I love this idea of not feeling great, or you sense your kid is feeling off, and just say, let's just go for a walk. You're not saying put down your phone. You're not taking something away. You're just creating a new environment to have a conversation. And I love that. I think that's great.
I want to ask just if you've got anything more on your mind that you would have hoped to get across in our conversation that we haven't talked about yet.
What I'd love is just to share that Ashley, myself, a lot of us are involved in this campaign called CA Moves, which is really trying to bring together diverse organizations to start a movement around movement. We had a kickoff on the Capitol steps in May in Sacramento. We've been launching some social in partnership with the council, fitness council. But, what made it really successful, this kickoff, was we had Special Olympics, Fit Kids, a bunch of fitness companies, mental health organizations, Parks and Rec. We had this incredibly diverse group of people who have a shared goal to get people moving. And so would ask anyone who's in this space, like, you don't have to do it by yourself. Just reach out to someone. Let's do it together. Because I think if we can do it together, we'll finally have an impact. And I think part of the reason we haven't had one is so many organizations are going at it on their own. So I'd love people to check us out, sign up for our newsletter. If you have a better idea, we'll join your organization. That's fine with me too. But let's start a movement about movement. I think we owe that to ourselves, and we definitely owe it to the future generations to get people moving. So clearly I'm quite passionate about it and would love everyone to join us if possible.
Beautiful. And what is the web address for California Moves?
It's ca-moves.org.
And what else will folks find there?
Well, we're going to start, we haven't done this yet because we just put it up, but we're going to add resources. So we will have Fit Kids, Positive Coaching Alliance. We want to be a place where people can go find other resources, just really a central location for that, not something that we're not creating programming. There's amazing programming, amazing ideas with many other organizations. So we hope to be a resource to help people find something that inspires them to get moving.
Yeah, that the collective action model is really impactful in a lot of different spaces, different social movements throughout the world. So I'm all in favor of that for sure, and glad to be a part of that with you. I'm also curious a little bit about the competitiveness in different sectors in that. So, health clubs have a financial vested interest in doing things a certain way, and that does not necessarily include walking and bicycling outdoors, although those things could be complementary to what happens in the health club. The health club doesn't necessarily make money off of that, right? And, the elite travel teams clearly are very vested interest financially that they don't want taken away from. Any ideas about how to work through those issues?
Well, I'm really proud of the fact that California Fitness Alliance has really been key part of getting CA moves going. Our board, our operators, if you had been at the kickoff on May 1st, we had a lot of operators there. They are, as an organization in California, we are really passionate about getting people moving, because we know if people move, the world will be healthier, which is our number one goal. But obviously, if people discover ways to move, they may then get into things that they join the health club world. And so I do think in California, through the California Fitness Alliance, we're trying to take a very different approach that's not about, and you're right, in the past, it's been like, well, if you can't do it at the gym, we're not going to talk about it. And we are very much about, let's get people moving, because we know if we do that, it has a huge ripple effect across the board. So that's definitely a big part of why CFA was founded and what we're advocating for. We're advocating for safe and equitable access to exercise and to get people moving, because we know that we play a role in that as the fitness industry, but we're not the only answer. And it's really the collective solution that's going to make an impact.
Francesca, thank you so much for taking time to explain some of these wonderful solutions that you have in mind, and you and your allies together, I'm sure, will have some success in implementing. It's been great speaking with you today.
Well, first of all, it's our allies, because we're in this together. And thank you so much. I'm just so impressed with everything Fit Kids does. You guys play such an important role in helping kids get moving in school. So thank you so much for having me. And we're here to support what you guys are doing in any way you can. So just really grateful to be asked and to be part of this. So thank you.